Back in 1963, when he was just 21, Look magazine called him the astonishing John Weidman. He was a star basketball player, captain of his team at the University of Pennsylvania, an honors student, Phi Beta Kappa. He wrote poetry and plays. He won a Rhodes Scholarship to study at Oxford, only the second black American to win that honor.
I wanted to be Horatio Alger. I was going to play in the NBA. There seemed to be no limits as I looked outside of myself. That was one side of it. The other side of it was clearly being black meant that you had to pretend about a lot of things. You just didn't deal with them. Yeah, they had to go in the back of your mind. I mean, I knew that I wasn't Horatio Alger. I knew that I was a black kid, sometimes in the district of Homewood, sometimes in Shadyside. And that meant that the world was not my oyster.
John Edgar Wideman is pretty old at this point. He's about 80, but he's one of the great living American authors. He also happens to be black. So on this Black History Month, I want to expose you to a couple of books of John Edgar Wideman. One brand new, one old, but also the storylines from these books. I don't know what you're supposed to learn from this little tale I'm going to tell you. It's a set of disturbing coincidences. I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe you're supposed to learn that life is pretty random. And depending who you are, like a black person in 20th century America, the thumb of luck might even go against you. So John Edgar Wideman wrote a book in the early 80s about his brother. They grew up in the Hill District of Pittsburgh, which is an old like the black neighborhood that was there for a long time. It's been kind of gentrified now. I think a little bit of it's still there. John Edgar Wideman was a teenager in maybe, might have graduated high school in 1960, 59 or something, and he was a wunderkind. He could play basketball. He was like he got a scholarship to some elite university. Plus, he was a really good writer. He scored really high on all his tests. So he ends up going to maybe University of Pennsylvania, and he starts writing, and he's becoming kind of a big deal. And he has a brother that's 10 years younger than him, which is quite a bit. So that means if Wideman was, say, he graduated from college in 63 when he was 22, his brother was 22 in 1973. Well, a lot different things were going on, the heroin epidemic, etc. So again, you should read this book, Brothers and Keepers. I won't.
Brothers and Keepers is the name of the book written by one of them based on conversations and letters with the other. The book is a plea to give his brother another chance.
I knew it would take something like 10 years in prison to make me turn around, to make me be what I could be.
Robbie Wideman, the younger of the two brothers, grew up in the streets of Homewood, a black neighborhood in Pittsburgh. Today, if you look at the distance, he lives not far away, only a few miles. But the reality of his home is light years away. For 9 years, Robbie Wideman has lived behind the walls of the state penitentiary in Pittsburgh. This cell block is home now. In 1975, he and two friends got into an argument with a fourth man over stolen property. Crooks stealing from crooks. The fourth man was shot, and because of medical negligence, bled to death. Even though another man pulled the trigger, Robbie Wideman was convicted of murder. His sentence, life without parole.
This very, very successful, talented guy, Wideman, who has been a professor now for, 50 years, probably since he was 30, at various universities, written very critically acclaimed, and I don't know if you've ever had, Brothers and Keepers might be the closest thing to like a bestseller, but he's very critically acclaimed. His brother, Robbie, who, like him, was a charismatic, had some talents. They came from not a broken home, a nice family back when very few families in America were all broken apart. They weren't particularly poor or anything like that. But, of course, by 73, the black neighborhoods had changed because heroin had pushed in. And long story short, his brother gets involved in doing heroin and selling it. And him and some of his buddies come up with the plan. They save up their money, and of all places, they go to Detroit, and they make their big score. They cap a bunch of dope. They bring it back to Pittsburgh to chop it up, and they don't really know what they're doing, so I think they cut it all. Like, it was good. And with heroin, once you dilute it and, you got some real good stuff, and you make, whatever you bought, 3 ounces, you make it into 30 ounces for street sale, you have to sell it. Like, I'm not an expert, but like within a week or 2 or 3 or something. Like, it can't, or more like some days, or it'll fall, as they call it, spoil. So when they get back to Pittsburgh, remember, this is a small, this black part of Pittsburgh where they're going to have to be at. It's just a small area. These 2, I think, particular cops that were working the narcotics, they were on these guys, Weidman's brother and them head, and they couldn't make any moves, and their heroin falls, if I'm remembering correctly. It's something like this. But again, go read the book, Brothers and Keepers. So now, they thought they were about to rise in the drug game. They did make a connect, like they were going to come up financially on the connect they had in Detroit, but now the money's all messed up. So now they want to do a robbery to get some money. Long story short, robbery goes bad. The fence, who is a white guy, who buys stolen property, he ends up, boom. So, John Edgar Wideman's brother Robbie gets life in prison. And I'm not sure if it was life, no parole, or how the Pennsylvania thing worked then. Pennsylvania, like a lot of states, brutal prison system.
But was life in the streets when you grew up that much different? What was normal for you? Was there no street crime? Were there no drugs? Was there no poverty?
The community itself was much more closely knit. It was much more like a small town, a small southern town. If as a kid, if I went out in the street, somebody on some porch, Mrs. Ellis, would be checking me out. If I went too far or did something I wasn't supposed to do, she certainly would tell my mother. The crime was petty ante stuff, and usually not directed with any kind of brutality or viciousness inside of the community.
You got in trouble, your mother punished you.
Exactly.
Right? Why didn't her firm hand work with Robbie?
I think his peer group was much stronger, and the people that he could look to outside of the family had an awful lot of influence on him. Robbie was part of a world which was a street world.
By the time the 60s came around and the time I grew up, those things had started to change. My generation started seeing the contradiction in the things that they were telling us. These changes weren't really happening. Especially for young black kids, these things weren't really happening. We were still getting turned away. I can still remember going home with my little buddy, who's a white child, and having his mother say, "What did you bring that nigger home for?"
That word hitting Robbie probably hit him more strongly than it hit me because his expectations had been raised.
So years are passing, so it becomes the early 80s. And John Edgar Wideman is a success. He's very highly acclaimed, and he's a professor of English literature at this point he might be, I think, at a university in Wyoming. And he's married, and he has a son and a daughter. And he has this brother who's doing life, no parole. But he's maintained a close connection with his brother, and his brother's not because brother's also a smart guy who just got mixed up in all this. So they correspond with each other in a deep way. He goes to visit them all the time. He brings his kids to visit their uncle in prison. I mean, they maintain as much of a family bond as possible. And he writes this really good book about, what went wrong with my brother and just their whole thing. And then maybe the mid-'80s, and it comes out, Brothers and Keepers. And this is Weidman's. Might even have been Might not have come out to the late 80s or 90. I can't remember. Either way, read it. So he's now, John Edgar Wideman is a big deal, or somewhat in the pop culture from this Brothers and Keepers book. He's fighting to get his brother out. They're hoping his brother can get some action.
But John Weidman has made a success of his life. He and his wife have built a comfortable home in Laramie. They have 3 bright children. John has time to write. His latest book, Brothers and Keepers, is his argument, his case, that his brother deserves another chance.
He doesn't want to forget his mistakes. He doesn't want to forget the past. He wants to look directly at it. He wants to have a chance to atone. He wants to change.
Is this just a case of 2 brothers, one blessed with talent and fortune, the other short on ability and predestined for failure, each getting what he deserves?
One day, or one summer day, Weidman's teenage son, who was 16 at the time, he's at a summer camp, and he's just sleeping in his bunk with his bunkmate or whatever, and he decides to kill his roommate for no reason. He kills him. So John Edgar Wideman's son now has killed his summer camp roommate for no reason. And this happened a long time ago. There's never been nothing's ever come out that they had a fight. I mean, he admitted that he just had an impulse and he just did it, which is very disturbing. So John Edgar Wideman's son had grown up and with the professor, father, and mother in very nice environment. You could think maybe some psychological solidarity with his uncle or something weird. Of course, the victim's parents don't want any mercy because there's no storyline. They were experimenting with drugs. They had a fight. I mean, the son presents he says he just snapped. Maybe there was some mental illness there, who knows. So now he has a brother and a son in prison, and the years roll on, which must be very, very sad. So recently, or in the last, 10 years, 7 years or something like that, his brother got out, Robbie, and I think he's written a book, Robbie Wideman. So you check that out. But he ended up doing 42 years or something in prison. He didn't even pull the trigger in the robbery. He did like 42 years in prison. His son, Arizona, did a lot of time, this must have happened that probably happened in the late 80s. So yeah, Brothers and Keepers must have come out in the early to mid 80s, and then the son did the crime in maybe the late 80s. Get you into reading some John Edgar Wideman. But the son, who again, a good-looking guy, very smart, 2 professor parents, he ends up. He was in a relationship. He married one. He might have married 2 of his prison psychiatrists, which is wild. He finally gets out on parole after doing a long period of time. The parents of the victim, and in this particular case, there was they weren't high, they weren't drunk, there was no fight. Like, he just really just did this. This was like a thrill kill, even by his own admission. So they're upset that he's out on bail. They hire a private investigator to follow him around. And when you're on parole or probation, unfortunately, as many of us know, but especially if you're on parole in a high-profile case in Arizona for murder and you just got out, if someone follows your every waking move, I mean, it's not that hard to be like, oh, you violated, you said you were at work, but you stopped, and you played 2 video games at the store. He had some kind of, if I remember correctly, seemingly mild violations or things that shouldn't have been held against him. So he was put back in jail. I'm not sure his status right now, back and forth in jail. This has been Weidman and his wife's whole life has been dealing with his brother and his son. There was a time during his brother, before the son did the murder, his brother broke out. They broke out of prison. Or no, when they were wanted for the murder, they actually drove out to see Weidman in Wyoming. That's in the book Brothers and Keepers. So the book Brothers and Keepers is really worth reading. Weidman has written other books. I've read several of the fiction ones. Very good. Brothers and Keepers worth reading. Now, Weidman has let me not say final, but he's 80 years old. He has a new book out. And it's about Emmett Till.
At a church on the south side of Chicago, Emmett Till's body would be on display for all to see.
It was on a Sunday afternoon. I won't ever forget, it was a Sunday afternoon. The church was very calm. The line was very orderly.
I thought that pretty soon the crowd would die down. It looked like all of Chicago was there.
Well, they brought the children with them because Emmett was 14 years old, and they wanted the younger kids to see what happened to Emmett. They were mad. They were angry.
Hopefully you know who Emmett Till is. If you don't, Emmett Till is the famous case in the 50s when the African-American, 12 or 14-year-old boy from Chicago, Emmett Till, went down to Mississippi in the summer just to visit some go back where relatives lives in the summer. He lives in Chicago. Get him out of the city for the summer. Go visit your rural relatives for the summer. He goes into a store. Something goes on between him and a white woman. The white woman says he catcalled her. Now, I think this woman, they found her and did books about her. If you're interested in the whole Emmett Till thing, read about that. What I'm doing in this video is touching so many big topics. You're going to have to go your homework if you're interested. You can do plenty of reading. There's plenty of stuff to read about all this. Emmett Till is he goes back home to his relative's house there in the rural part of Mississippi. The local clan, white men, kick the door into the family house. They got flashlights. They take him out of the bed at gunpoint, do things to him, put him in a river. He is dead. So we know that story now. Again, now this next final part is just, it's spooky. It also makes you think about, it makes you think about a lot of things, but it's weird. But I'm reading this book now, so you should read this book too. This final book is about Emmett Till and his father, Louis Till. Now, what does Louis Till, his father, have to do with it? So the killers of Emmett Till go on trial, a very sorry little trial in Mississippi, courtroom 1954. They present all the evidence that these people are guilty. The all-white jury promptly finds them not guilty, of course. The national press, this is one of those, this was an important moment in the civil rights movement or in American history, because it showed, people in the North didn't quite get it. Like, oh, whoa, they grabbed a 12-year-old or 13, whatever he was, out of his bed because some woman claimed he said something to her. Like, there was no allegation that Emmett Till, attacked her or did anything. Her claim of what she did to him was merely saying some words, and I don't think he probably even did that. And so now the people in the North are like, oh, wow, they'll just take kids out of bed, kill them, throw them in the river, and then find the people not guilty. So now there's no justice in Mississippi, literally. So this was a big deal case. Emmett Till let her, the mother, I don't want to say her name wrong, Mrs. Till, let him be photographed. He looked really bad. That's a famous photograph many of you have seen. She let him be photographed like that to horrify people so they would see what had happened. So the feds were going to come back in, and you know how they do. Okay, they found you not guilty of murder in state court, but there's other charges. We're going to give you a federal kidnapping, which is a capital offense. You could technically get executed for kidnapping. Kidnapping is bad. You don't want a kidnapping offense, because they went to Till's family's house and grabbed him at gunpoint and took him to wherever they did, and then did what they did and put him in the river. So forget the murder. We're going to get you for kidnapping, and they could have gave him a very long time. But suddenly these documents appear. Lewis Till, Emmett Till's father's military record. And Lewis Till, there were 96 U.S. servicemen executed in the European theater of war during World War II. 86 were colored, were black, African American. 83 of the 96 were black. Lewis Till was one of them. I haven't gotten quite to the part where that happens. So again, this is a new book that's on Kindle. Just John Edgar Wideman, Emmett Till book. You can look it up. But the father and another, of course, in war, civilians get raped, killed. So some Italian women in the village were raped and killed. Louis Till him and another soldier were convicted of it and hung. I don't know. There's probably not a lot of records of it. Did he do it? Did he not do it? Maybe not. Maybe he did. But what an awful symmetry. What if he didn't do it? Just like his son didn't do it. Or what if he did do it? And that poisoned even the little bit of revenge they could have got against his son's killers. So, pretty dark, but it just does expose you to a great writer, John Edgar Wideman. Read Brothers and Keepers. Buy his new Emmett Till, Lewis Till book. If you read both of those, I mean, you're going to cover a very smart person considering developments in Black America from the 60s till now. So he has a long period, of living through it. So maybe you'll learn something. You'll definitely get exposed to a new writer, John Edgar Wideman. But yeah, pretty spooky. These type of stories where there's unexpected, weird connections. I don't know. Maybe I've had a lot of things happen to me in life, and you realize how random things really are. People like to say, God has a plan and this, that, and the third. Maybe. Sure doesn't seem like it a lot of the time. But John Edgar Wideman, go read the new Louis Till book, and definitely read Brothers and Keepers. Out Prophet, and happy February.